Hello and welcome to From the BLN, the Burnley podcast. Yes, we're back. The international break has finished. England have swept aside two more opponents without too much trouble. Qualified for the World Cup over where Mr. Paul Woodhouse is in the US of A. I guess unless Paul or Woody, I don't know why I call him Paul, Woody wins Il Gordo or whatever the massive lottery is, you're probably not going to be able to afford World Cup tickets. I saw them prices this week. But he does join us from his Cleveland bunker, reminiscence of the Dallas bunker that the ITV team was in '94. I'm obviously based in Burnley, and a bit closer to me, a bit closer to home. Not in a bunker, I'm presuming, because his Wi-Fi looks pretty good. In Hampton, Mr. Chris Boden. Welcome back, chaps. It always feels a bit weird when we're not around and we don't convene for a week or so when the international break's on, but Chris, I mean, we were talking off recording about how much me and Woody kind of find international football pointless, but you like the non-stress of it, don't you? And it doesn't really come much more stressful than Burnley versus Leeds on Saturday.
Well, there's absolutely no jeopardy whatsoever watching England qualify for any tournament. It's just when they come to face a decent side in the finals itself. But yeah, it's a couple of weeks off, but it is stressful, isn't it? It's a real, one of them. You can feel it in the pit of your stomach already. And a Saturday, can't lose this. And I know a lot of people feel it's a must-win, but you're just desperate for a performance and fingers crossed a second win of the season.
Yeah, and Woody, I mean, it feels quite early to be talking about must-wins, but Chris is right. It's a must-not-lose, isn't it? I mean, you need a positive result. If we're going to kind of highlight teams, I think at the start of the season we highlighted teams like Crystal Palace, who were going to be shit, Brentford, who were going to be rubbish, Brighton, who were going to be rubbish. And actually, Bournemouth, we were going to be rubbish, and they're all having incredible. I think Crystal Palace's ridiculous run's just come to an end. But in joking aside, the promoted teams plus two or three others in that position, West Ham and Wolves, perhaps these are the games at home where you've got to get some if you've got any hope of survival, aren't they?
Well, we said it before the break, didn't we? This is our little snippet of 3 games that we've got to try and get results from, haven't we? And I'm with Chris. You can't afford to lose this. You really can't. And all the promoted sides have come up and given it a decent thrash. It's not as if like we're all languishing in the bottom 3. Leeds and Sunderland have come up. Sunderland have showed a little bit of something, and Leeds have shown quite a little bit of grit, haven't they? They have turned into a dirty looking side. They're a different kind of a dirty Leeds, and fair play to them. And I really don't see this as being like a guaranteed 3-pointer by any stretch. I can see it's going to be either by 1 goal or a very dour, 0-0. So 4-3 incoming.
Yeah, and Chris, I mean, we'll touch on what Woody said about a different type of Leeds, but we saw last season, we didn't, there wasn't much in either of the game, was there really? There was the Koleosho goal on the break at Ellen Road, but other than that, we kind of cancelled each other out. Do you expect something similar this time, or do you think that our team has evolved, the likes of, Chowner, and we'll get on to who's perhaps going to start up front if Foster's not fit. Slightly different back line. We've got Walker. We talked in the summer about them becoming the land of the giants and getting all the big men. The two teams' shapes and look and feels have changed. Do you think the cancelling out that we saw last season in the 2 games will be the kind of run of play again this year?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because the perception was across the country that Leeds were by far and away the best side, and they've ended up nicking the league title off us in the dying embers of the final game of the season. We took 4 points off them. I think they were very easy on the eye. Leeds, they were certainly easier on the eye than Burnley were much of last season. But you look at it, it's different personnel. Like you mentioned, the different shapes. It's I'd say Leeds have you've 2 managers here in Farker and Parker, who have had a go at the Premier League before and found it a chastening experience, shall we say?
Yeah.
But so Farker's gone in, and you can see that he's wanted physicality. They've switched from like a 4-2-3-1 to more of a 4-3-3. Always got the three forwards on the park, which is interesting. From where they were controlling games last season with nice possession. They look a bit, they were obviously a bit resolute last season, but not as resolute as Burnley. They look like they're relatively tough to break down. I've seen that they've given not given much in the way of big chances away on these modern stats, whereas us and Forest are the poorest in the division,
Yeah.
I believe, and it's one of those. Is you throw into it's a Roses game. There'll be a big following in the away end. Atmosphere will be absolutely tip top, I imagine.
Bit of drizzle as well, you suspect?
Yeah, I say it every week.
A greasy top.
We have to get our noses in front.
Yeah.
If we get our noses in front, we have a chance. If you
Yeah.
fall behind, then I mean, Leeds, I think they've got 6 in the last 3 games. They found a way to start scoring goals when people had questioned that. Calvert-Lewin's playing well without firing in front of goal, by all accounts. But we found a way to score goals, but we have to give ourselves a fighting chance, as we did against Sunderland.
Yeah, and just Woody, what do you make of Daniel Farke? I'm somebody, I really like him. I think he's a really smart football manager. I think he's a bit like Parker in the, he never allows the highs to get him too highs and the lows to get him too. He seems very pragmatic. What do you make of Farke, I guess 2.0 in the Premier League? Because as Chris said, him and Farke and Parker have both had bad experiences in this top flight, but both seem to have come in with a different approach this time out.
It still looks like Gary Oldman out of Slow Horses, though, doesn't it? You know what I mean?
It's a jacket, isn't it?
It is. And it's just that like slightly lank hair that he's got going
wet farts and stuff.
Exactly. But he's obviously changed his tune this time round. He's made them infinitely more resolute. The one-off times I've seen Leeds this year, my word, they were odd to watch, especially against Everton. But it's similar to us last season, in so much as the fact that he's there, like you say, he's got some bigger lads in. They've decided they're gonna defend and they're gonna get what they can. Whether it be a set piece or whatever, and they're gonna do it to us. And yes, we were probably quite fortunate to get 4 points out of them last season, weren't we? If we're being perfectly honest, and I think it could be it could be one for the ages this Saturday.
Yeah, and coming on the back of international break, Chris. I mean, we usually say the international break comes at the wrong time, but after the Villa performance and result, probably came at the right time. There is almost a hint of uncertainty, isn't there, after an international break in terms of players coming back, and we'll get on to team news from a Burnley perspective in a second. But you mentioned that, following from Ellen Road, the atmosphere, it has all the ingredients, rather than perhaps a Burnley Fulham or a Burnley Bournemouth, to be a real firecracker, doesn't it, at Turf Moor on Saturday?
Absolutely. Like I say, it's one of those where, although people probably marked it down as an opportunity for points, it's one of those where a lot of people maybe feel Burnley are probably underdogs, which again I like. I like it when we're underdogs. I like that sort of what have you got to lose sort of thing. And it's I say we need to be Leeds are steadily. Farke has spoken about the point a game that I always point to. We're off the pace in that regard, and we need to be catching Leeds up in that regard. But it's a proper club. I mean, everyone jokes aside, dirty Leeds, this, that, and the other. It's a proper club, a great following. There'll be a terrific noise. But those sort of occasions are the ones where I find that the Burnley fans, come out for, and they'll give it back both barrels. Yeah. And like I say, especially if the team give them something to hold on to. It's we've not played badly. We've scored goals. Defensively it doesn't look great, but I think if you take the goals conceded at City and out the way and Tottenham, you'd probably say that we've defended very well. We've looked
Yeah, I'd
resolute.
agree. I'd agree.
I think it sort of leaves a bit of a misleading picture. The City scoreline. Yeah, we've been in every game we've played.
Yeah.
Yeah, we weren't at the races at Villa last time out, but it's there's nothing to fear. Nothing to fear. Just go out there and be the best Burnley we can be, and fingers crossed that's good enough on the day.
Yeah. And Woody, what you really want is you want a Kyle Walker challenge early doors, don't you? Or a Hartman going through into somebody, or a Florentino kind of just leaving some on, because they'll be thinking the same. There'll be a Leeds podcast, from the Ellen Road end or from the Don Revy stand or whatever at Leeds. I should have checked a Leeds podcast. I do apologise to any Leeds podcasts, but they'll be saying we've got to go to Burnley. We've got to have somebody stick something on, a winger, or we've got to have somebody stick something on, in centre mid, give them a bit of a reducer, and that's what local derbies are all about, isn't it? That's what that Battle of the Roses. It's what we get into watching football for, isn't it? That early kind of let them know you're there, son.
No, exactly, and I think it's going to behoove Leeds a little bit more to because we're obviously a little bit more of a bunch of fancy downs. I can imagine they want to go through the back of Anthony, and try and keep him quiet and keep us quiet down the flanks and try and cut off, make us play as long as we possibly can. And I don't think they'll be coming to play too much fancy football. They'll do a job on us, but we've seen that apart from the aberrations with obviously the first Villa goal and some of the defending, and that's the problem at this level. Last season you could have 2 or 3 aberrations a game and invariably you get away with them. We see now that you only need the one and that's it. You're behind, then you're suddenly 2 behind and you're chasing a game and you're going to struggle. So yeah, we just got to we got to be at them. We got to be at it, and we got to turn up. And we've shown last season that even though we were arguably probably the poorer side, especially at home, but we did a job on them at their place, and we know we can get a result out of this lot, and that could be the difference. We've shown we can do something against this lot, and hopefully we can.
Yeah. Let's move on to team news and team selection, Chris. Is this the game to ditch the 5 at the back? I think I was discussing this with some mates, and I'm not quite sure the 5 at the back worked brilliantly against Liverpool, right? It worked fantastically. I'm not sure it's worked as good since then. And I wonder, and we kind of mused about this, I think, after the City game, whether the likes of Esteve, who I don't think's been sparkling, perhaps it isn't used to playing 5 at the back, and that's what's leading to a lot of this, positional mismanagement of him. I just wondered, would you drop the back 5? Have you seen enough for this next run of 3 games? Do you think a 4-4-2 with Walker at right back, and then whoever he chooses, Twanzebe or Ekdal alongside Esteve with Hartman, or are you still thinking, let's not change it for the changing's sake?
I sort of mused after the Villa game. I think it served its purpose now.
Yeah.
Having said, I think we've been defending resolutely. We've been shipping goals, and we've been shipping soft goals with this system. It's as big an upheaval playing this system as any change in football is. Like you say, you get in your centre halves who are happy, sort of defending the 18-yard box sort of thing, are all of a sudden over in the touchlines on the flanks, sort of having to make challenges and track people, etc. And it is a big turn up. And I'm sure I don't think Josh Laurent's done anything wrong, but I think it's about finding that balance. And if we're conceding goals with 5 at the back and not looking sparkling going forward, I think we need to, like I said, probably put that like a 4-3-3. You play Anthony one side, and he gives you that diligence up and down. And I say whether he goes with Brun Larson for the same thing, or
Yeah.
if he sticks with our friend Loom. But or even plays sort of if he can play Hannibal in one of those roles as well.
Yeah.
To be honest, but you still need that that discipline and organisation. But I prefer us to play with a player, an extra player further forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that your thinking, Woody? I mean, we've cried out to see Florentino, Ugachukwu and Cullen in a midfield three. Are you of the same thought process? That 4-3-3 just gives us that little bit of giving the opposition a little bit of something extra to think about in their own defensive third or two-thirds?
It's one of those things, isn't it? It's like you're asking a lot of Josh Laurent in his first season at the age of he's 13,
I think
he's 29, 30. Yeah, exactly. To suddenly come in and play in a position that he's never played before in the Premier League. And it's that, and I know we're trying to have this little bit of fluidity and we've got that third, he's going to be the third who can push in and Walker can, also come in off the right flank. But it's like we have two pivots. We can do it in a different way, can't we?
Yeah.
We can either utilise Ugachukwu or Florentina to actually be that shield, and so have a midfielder who can drop off as opposed to a third who can push in. And we've seen that there's been a hell of a lot of space at times, and so I think just make it uglier in the middle of the park if we have to, and if you have to then have two dropping off, at least you've got two dropping off, or you can push. I think Ugachukwu can play a little bit further forward, and Florentina's going to find you a pass, and what Cullen's going to do. I mean, it still might misfire quite badly, but I think they're at least it's a better looking midfield, isn't it, than having Laurent joining from that third when we know it hasn't worked particularly well, apart from, like you say, against Liverpool. So I'm in favour of changing it up a bit as well, and a 4-3-3 does make quite a bit of sense.
Yeah, definitely. And Chris mentioned Hannibal there. Of course, I think he got his first goal for Morocco, and they've qualified Tunisia even. Sorry, I do apologize. There we go. For Tunisia, who have qualified for USA, Canada, Mexico 2026. Quite a long title. And only team to qualify without conceding a goal, I think it said. Because I think their qualification round is finished. I know England probably still have that chance to do so. But there we go. Chris, just looking at some of the other conundrums, shall we say. Lyle Foster, withdrawn from the second of South Africa's games. I think they won that one 3-0. Scott Parker says he also qualified, so confidence will be high for Lyle. Parker says he expects him to be available. That feels very much like manager talk for don't expect him to be playing. Does this then give Breuer, somebody else who had a fairly successful international break, goal and assist against Jordan, insert Katie Price jokes there, if you wish. Or do you kind of think he'll go with Fleming? I have to say, looking at the Breuer assist and goal, two things that struck me. A, he looked a lot sharper than he has done so far for us. And B, he looks to have lost a little bit of weight over the last couple of weeks. And I say that having put weight on, having been on holiday for 2 weeks. So we've gone in the opposite direction. But is it Breuer or Fleming for you, Chris?
I get the feeling Foster will be all right, But if the dead leg does keep him out, I'd be going Fleming. From I say he was brought in at Ellen Road last year, and he was one of his arguably standout performances of the season. Gave us a focal point and was aggressive against up against. Roden, who started the season ever so well, got his goal for Wales in the week, and rather exuberantly celebrated going 1-0 up when there's like another 80 minutes to go against a superior football team. Not wise. But he's if Foster doesn't make it, I just don't see how. From what we've seen of Breuer, I don't think the manager's going to say, "Oh, look, he's looked all right against Jordan, hasn't he?" He's like, good grief, sort of caliber of opposition that we're talking here.
Yeah.
It's Fleming would be the man for me. That physicality. It'd be great if Fleming was that type who we could running behind. But he showed. I mean, he's not rapid, is he? Let's be let's be straight up now. But he's still got that ability to run, in behind, as he showed on occasion. There's the win at Chef Wednesday last year where he's got that in his locker. He deserves an opportunity, I feel.
Yeah.
So he would be my more solid selection at this stage. I like what Broyer's got potentially again, and again it's like with Foster. We're talking potential, aren't we? If you put everything together on any given day, they are a right handful. But is Broyer ready to do that? I'm not sure.
Yeah. And Woody, I mean, Chris mentioned the physicality at Ellen Road. I mean, Fleming was certainly physical when he came on against Villa, dished a bit out to the Villa man there, which was probably long overdue. But you get that feeling, having, we talked to start a podcast about the physicality of Leeds and the kind of land of the Giants. You kind of think that Broyer's not the sharpen your elbows, give him a bit of something. He's a bit more, I don't know, running into the channels from what we know and kind of getting beyond that defense. You kind of think Fleming might fit that role, don't you? Kind of giving the lead centre half something to really think about if a ball's coming anywhere, within 10 yards of the penalty box.
Yeah, if we're gonna tighten it up a little bit and kind of go 4-3-3, then I think it makes a little bit more sense, especially considering he'll have been working for 2 weeks with Fleming, where the other two have been off twatting about qualifying and scoring and shit like that. But you'd think that he will have seen enough of working with Fleming, especially these past 2 weeks, to see whether he's ready. And like you say, if we're going to try and tighten it up a little bit and go a little bit longer, then maybe Fleming's and we want to be a little bit more aggressive, then Fleming's arguably a man, isn't he? If he's been showing up in training. And the thing is, both Broyer and Foster, we know, are somewhere there and thereabouts, and if they're both starting to hit a little bit of form, and I think maybe Foster's dropped off a little bit, but if Broyer has and his goal and his assist were quality, irrespective of who he's playing against, and like you say, he's lost a pound or three, and if he's coming to, and that's the level and the standard that we're going to be seeing off him, then don't throw him in straight away. But coming off the bench, that's going to be quite interesting. So we'll see. But I think I've got a feeling, I'm with you too, that I think Fleming may get a nod.
Yeah,
for
definitely.
Saturday.
We've still got Mike Trezor as well, just to give him his
exactly.
his weekly mention, just so nobody forgets about Magic Mike. But let's move on. I mean, after a lot of kind of, well, not really speculation, they've pitched up and put on shirts and scarves, but the ALK deal to buy Espanyol, RCD Espanyol in Barcelona, which we know is a city close to Burnley chairman Alan Pace's heart, has gone through. Now, Chris, his press conference was really interesting, I have to say. There were a few little nuggets in there that were kind of quite interesting. Interesting to know that he still wants to win the Champions League with one of the clubs he's associated with. I know that was one of his kind of early things as Burnley owner, kind of getting into Europe. Who says it's beyond the doubt? And plans are in place that if both clubs do qualify, he would step back from one, Burnley Football Club, I'd imagine. But he also had this really kind of strange, and again, I'm kind of using the quote a little bit out of context, but was reporting saying kind of he's been welcomed with open arms by the Espanyol fans, which wasn't necessarily the case when he took over Burnley. Now, my remembering of the situation is that the initial kind of welcome for Alan Pace, before we kind of knew the leverage buyout nature of the deal, was very, very positive, wasn't it? I think, after we've not mentioned this for a while, but the Dale Stephens transfer window, I think Burnley fans were looking for somebody to replace new Cheltenham owner Mike Garlick. And I think we were quite welcoming. I know we were kind of a bit of a, cantankerous old bunch. But is Mr. Pace misremembering the welcome he got at Turf Moor, or am I misremembering? And there were questions and not kind of open arms when him and ALK came in at Burnley.
Well, I can't speak for his personal experiences. What he sort of going round the ground and what fans were sort of saying to him, sort of thing. But I think it was. I think the takeover was met quite positively at the time. I think we liked a lot of the stuff. What he did in getting the women's team under the umbrella of the men's team. The plans. The straight in with the revamp of Turf Moor and the LED screens and so on and so forth that made a tiring looking stadium have a new lease of life, really. And it made a lot of positive noises. I think people were, didn't spend enough in that summer window, but they were pleased to see, a shift from the norm. We were fishing in different markets. Maxwell Cornet coming in. It was an exciting signing. The one that fans have been craving, rather than an established, sort of championship player that we usually tended to look on and develop. And I mean, within 18 months, I suppose, Burnley had a relegation, and I'm sure there were fans who were critical of him.
Well, we know,
there,
weren't they? They were the first series, I think, of the documentary was fans basically saying he's an American, he don't know what he's talking about. But that was 18 months after he came in, wasn't it? That
exactly,
was
exactly.
We got rid of Dyche, we got rid of Sean Dyche, and things hadn't quite. We'd kind of gone down with a bit of a whimper in the end after the initial Mike Jackson revival. But yeah, it kind of since then. Yes, we were relegated under Company, but I think even from the Beale end has changed tact in terms of being, giving the chairman praise for some of the changes he's made, haven't we, Chris? I mean, we have been positive.
Praise where praise is due. He's gone out there, and I mean, can you imagine the sort of the pressure of right? We've let go a manager who was bordering on a decade with Burnley. He basically built the modern Burnley as we know it, training ground and all, ethos, DNA, the works, and had 7 out of 8 years in the Premier League and got back in Europe for the first time in half a decade. That is a massive, massive appointment, and we have to say he got it right. It's the Championship campaign. The football's as good as we'll ever see in our lives. Didn't go great, the second year, but bottom line, I mean, a former Burnley manager is now being lauded as one of the most tactically astute managers in European football, and many people's pick to win the Champions League. So you can't knock his select, and then to then lose, which a major upset to Alan. We all joked, he worshipped the ground Vincent walked on. To then go out and then be fairly pragmatic and think, no, we need a manager who knows his way out of this division. Might not be as sexy as Vincent, but he's gone down the Parker route and got that spot on again. We used to praise Barry Kilby for his, he stuck with Stam, and he picked Steve Cottrell, although it sort of wavered at the end. I think he was the right man at the right time to steady the ship.
Yeah.
And then obviously, a succession of good until we hit the Brian Laws appointment. But he could be pleased with his work in that sense so far. I say the other thing that's ever sat awkwardly with me is the leverage buyout. I don't like it. It's since been made illegal, and we're in debt. But I don't understand the financial side of things sufficiently enough to to pass further comment, to be honest. But it is what it is, isn't it? As long as we're in the Premier League or consistently in the Premier League, it'll be fine.
Yeah. I don't know about you, Woody, when Chris was talking about former Burnley manager being lauded as one of the best tactical nous in Europe, until he mentioned the Champions League. I actually thought he was on about Steve Cotterill there for a minute. But I mean, the leverage buyout, I mean, this is a kind of question which, it's a bit of a loaded one, but you know how I like firing loaded ones, so you can say the word bullshit.
There you go.
As time goes on, does the leverage buyout become less of a problem in the minds of Burnley fans? Now, we know it's always going to be a problem because, you know, we are only kind of 2 seasons in the Championship away from being in real trouble. But the pragmatic approach to player recruitment that we've seen over the last couple of windows under Parker, i.e. bringing in your Florentinos, your Ugochukwus, players that will definitely have a value where we were buying players who were a bit like, we're probably never going to get the money back. Hello, Magic Mike again. Do you think that the leverage buyout, I mean, we'll always kind of hold it quite dear because we like to hold the flame to the feet of people. Do you think Burnley fans think less and less of the leverage buyout the longer this kind of cycle of success goes on? And if we were to stay up this year, would it almost disappear beyond comprehension in most people's mind?
It's one of those, isn't it? It's a couple of things. Like Chris said, the vast majority of people don't, and football fans in general, don't understand the financials. And the financials are getting more complex and they're getting more bizarre. And it's one of those things that a club like Burnley, or any club, to be fair, you don't necessarily understand the implications until they happen. You know, until we've had 2 seasons in and we start doing a little bit of a Luton, for example, or we go the other direction and do a bit of a Bournemouth. The point is we're slap bang in the middle in this like football purgatory, aren't we? Constantly bouncing up and down. And you've got to go in one direction or the other because that cannot be a constant. And so then we're going to find out exactly what a leverage buyout looks like. You know, for example, once Espanyol start doing a little bit better and we have a season or 2 in the Championship, we become, you know, not quite as we don't, you know, you don't want. He's probably not one to pop over on his holidays quite as much, is he? You know, and listen to us sardonic, miserable Burnley bastards whining at him. But yeah, it's one of those you don't know. I mean, we're going to find out within a season or 3 because we're not going to keep doing this. We can't keep doing this. So
yeah. Definitely. Interestingly, Mr. Pace is at a fans forum on Tuesday night, so maybe the kind of comments that came out as a result of a question I think from Sam Marsden, I believe is a Burnley lad, works out in the Spanish press. I think the comments about Burnley fans not welcoming actually came from a question from Sam. But it'd be interesting to see that. I think that is being broadcast on YouTube, or it'd be available on YouTube soon after. I know last time they were scrabbling around for questions because I think a few people didn't bother turning up. But if anybody is going and does fancy asking that question on behalf of your favourite Burnley podcast from the BLN, then feel free to do so. I think we'll leave it there, chaps. I think we've pretty much covered everything. I think we're looking forward to the game against Leeds on Saturday. We'll be back with a rapid reaction, or at least a couple of the pod squad will be back with the rapid reaction post Leeds United on Saturday night at some point. And then, of course, we'll do the full debrief, record that as a squad on Sunday, ready for your Monday morning commute as well. Don't forget, if you don't yet subscribe to us on YouTube and you fancy looking at a load of middle-aged blokes with varying degrees of facial and head hair, then click the subscribe button below. If you are listening to this on audio and you don't yet follow us on your podcast platform, do click follow as well and join the Burnley revolution that we're creating with From the Be All End. Just a shout out as well, if you've not yet watched or listened, our friend Joe over at Turfcast has a fantastic interview with Robbie Blake on there. Really funny. There's a couple of clips have already gone out, which I'm sure you've seen, but do give it a listen. Really love what Joe does over at Turfcast, and to get someone like Robbie on, in the wake of what we did during the summer as well, I think it's a good ecosystem that we've got at Burnley, so do support Turfcast on that as well. Until next time, until we see you again and get in your ears again, enjoy the weekend, enjoy the game, and up the Clarets.